to the January 28th regular school board meeting for the Pullman School District. We'll start with our flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you in the audience here for waiting. We had a little delay because of the computer issues, and we're up. So, our next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Dr. Stern, do you have any changes this evening?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I will move that we approve the agenda as presented this evening.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded that we approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 You need to turn your microphones on.
Thank you very much. We now have the portion of the meeting devoted for visitors, so if there's anyone in the audience that would like to address the school board this evening, they may do so by coming up to the podium and announce your name and address, and then you can have up to 3 minutes for your remarks, and we'll listen, but we will not take any action this evening, but we may bring it forward as a discussion item in the future. So do we have any visitors that would like to address the school board this evening? No? Okay. We now move on to our reports, correspondence, and programs. We'll start with our board reports. Susan?
It's Jefferson School Carnival tomorrow, or no, the 30th, excuse me, Friday.
Friday.
So that's fun things going on there, but that's my report.
Okay, thank you. Dean?
No report this evening.
Okay, thank you. Carl?
Just as fun to watch steel going up outside. Those of you that might be my age and worked with Tinker Toys and then later generations Legos and so on, it's fun to watch. They're skilled people.
I just commented to Paul how nice it was. The weather has been so conducive to construction during the winter time like this. This is awesome. They get about 6 extra weeks of construction time, so it is awesome. Allison?
No report, thanks.
Okay. And I have no report this evening, so we'll move on to our superintendent's report. Paul?
Okay, we have Cameron Groh here this morning to do his update of the school improvement plan. Do you have anything to introduce there? Or
Cameron's got it.
Not at all. As always, thank you for inviting me, and I'm going for a new record tonight, Susan. And actually, we're going to be really brief. Just want to bring up a few highlights that we have. There's no changes, but I just want to throw out a few things at you that we've been working on. Of course, we always take a look at our MAPS results, and we just started our MAPS assessments for this winter and have been doing some amazing work, especially with our low-level readers. And that was one of our focuses this year, and we were able to obtain a Read 180 that really focuses on that low-level reader and how well they can do in the classroom. And we received those results just recently, and actually one of the teachers is here. We went over those results this morning, and just amazing growth out of some of our kids who are really struggling. I just wanted to go over, we had we look at years worth of growth, and that's really what we're hoping for. 15 out of our 17 students already received a year's worth of growth in that classroom. Give you an idea of what that RIT growth looked like for some students. We had an 18-point growth, a 16-point growth, a 17-point growth, a 33-point growth, an 11-point growth, 30-point growth, an 8 and a 9-point growth out of kids. Amazing stuff. We're looking forward to look into our 8th grade class, and then some of our students with IEPs as well. We're very excited, and so that's really what we had charged to do, at least initially in the year. A lot of our data that we're going to end up looking at is really focused on end-of-the-year assessments, such as MSP. Well, for us, as we get moving on, we don't have the MSP anymore in the areas of reading and math. So we're focusing on the Smarter Balance assessment. So you have myself and Paula Cartwright really focused on what can a schedule look like as far as giving that assessment, because it looks so different. And you had teams today, which this collaboration piece is amazing, where you had the middle school up with the high school today, really focused on getting together and figuring out what that 612 looks like, because it is so important for those kids as we look at Common Core and the Smarter Balance assessment. So I did want to bring that up. Of course, next week we actually begin our assessment of how we're doing in the area of behavior, timeouts, suspensions as well. We'll actually go over those pieces next week and have those ready for our PBIS team as we move forward. We're really looking at, of course, having that time in the classroom, of course, move up, and any time out of the classroom, move down. I know this is a big part as well, and I just got this data from Linda Jovanovich. You know that we do our composting as well. Composting is a big part of what we do, and how we're changing and growing as we move along. Over the course of the first semester, we actually had 1,632 pounds of food waste that was not put into the garbage, but put into compost. So that's one of those things to where you're saying, wow, what does that look like, you know, if we're all to do that. We have some unique plans. We actually have a garden started in that back plot, and we're working with the YMCA. We're actually having the YMCA go out every day and work on those pieces, and trying to get some community partners to really help us. We have big ideas, but sometimes we don't have the time for the big ideas, and looking to find those community partners is a big deal for us. But I just wanted to give a brief update on that. And that's all I have for this evening. You have
Good job,
any
Cameron.
questions? Good job. Doing great work. Doing great work.
Cameron, I
Thank you.
just wanted to comment that the Lincoln Middle School facilities, they're being run like almost 24/7 with all the construction here at the high school that Carl mentioned, that Lincoln Middle School has really taken on a tremendous load.
Well, and you know what? Justin Polstad, our assistant principal, is doing an amazing job with that. He's there tonight while I'm here.
Okay.
We have a wrestling match, PHS wrestling match tonight, along with junior varsity girls basketball games in the small gym. So.
Because I was there last month, I think, at the DARE program. I mean, it was just kind of phenomenal to see how all the facilities are being used and kind of taking up the extra.
Yeah, and that's unique. And as a principal, you always want your school to be the center of the community. So I love having people there.
Okay, good.
Thank you
anyway,
very much.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron.
Thank you, Cameron.
Bob, do you want to talk to us about consolidated program review?
Yeah, I just wanted to give the board the update that I believe it was January 20th was our deadline to upload documents and evidence with the 99-page consolidated program review checklist, which seems to increase every year I stay in education. It gets longer, and I just want to put a thank you out to all the staff, from the office to schools, putting in the work to gather those pieces of evidence and uploading that. It takes a lot of time and energy, and I just want to thank the staff because they've done an amazing job getting it together by the deadline and uploading all that information to OSPI. We're anticipating a site visit on March 3rd. Whether or not that will occur, I'm not sure. Other districts surrounding us have reported that their visits have been canceled and they're going to a desk review, which means they just review the documents online and then provide a corrective action report for them to correct things and resubmit. So I'll keep you informed as I find out if we're still on for our visit or we're going to do a desk audit instead. So
Good.
I just wanted to give you an update on that. A couple other items to add. I did get an email this week from Jeff Barrett from the Seattle Visiting Nurse Association. I did send a letter on our behalf thanking him for that, and he sent me back some results that they helped 342 people the evening that they were here providing immunizations, and that broke down to 53 faculty and staff, 180 students, 4 non-student child, which I'm guessing is below the age of 3, 91 parents, and 14 general public. So, and it was very successful. They visited over 50 districts across the state, and they're setting up appointments for next year. And I already said, please sign us up. So we'll be working to get a date and a time, and they're looking at trying to expand because of we had a lot of people attend, and so they're looking at maybe expanding their staff so they can handle additional people. So just wanted to give an update.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
The last, kind of folding in with the construction update, which we kind of already had from a couple of you briefly. I've been beginning to go around and do our district update in the community, so I thought I'd run through the slides quickly. I won't give you the whole narrative because most of this stuff you've heard about before and we've had discussions, but just so you know what the community's seeing when I do go out. The first two slides are just background information about the bond and the process that we've been through so far and the players in the process, our architect, project manager, the staff, so forth. This one talks about the summer projects and the letting of the contract to Garco this fall and the beginning of demolition, and we're well into construction at this time. And we show people how they can continue to, if they go to our website, www.psd267.org, on the home page there's a link to quite a bit of information that's updated regularly, at least twice a week. There are some updates on there. There's some photo updates every 15 minutes actually. There's a camera that takes a picture of what's going on. So this is what we're shooting for. That's the image of the school when it's completed. This is kind of that same image as it's a little light right now. I mean, I don't know what our bulb is doing here, but it's typically not that dark or not that bright when I show it. But if I can. You see that? For some reason my cursor is not showing up, and I don't have up in the upper. You're all pretty oriented. We've got the stadium building is the bright thing right in the middle, and that's been demoed, and they're actually going to start sheetrocking inside this week, so it's getting really close to being completed. You can see the steel beams off to the right, and well, I wish I could point to something, but I can't for some reason. But you're going to see basically the front of the school is being constructed right now, and that is the front door. And just this week they poured that slanted gym wall, the base of that slanted gym wall. So if you happen to walk out there, you can see that. Yeah, it's going to actually look like the picture. And at the time of this picture, into December, this was just an angle looking. You're looking at that same direction, but they didn't have that angle wall in yet. And this is another view of the front of the school, and right about where it says BJ, you're standing inside the wing of the school up in that upper left-hand corner. You're standing just inside of the wall that doesn't exist yet, but these are the footings for it. And then a lot of stuff going on that you can't see easily in the back of the school on the east side of the school. And this is really the beginning of excavation and building a road around the school. You're looking back towards the school, towards the west, and a massive amount of earth has been moved out of that area, which will become in the very back, up against those blue walls, is about where the commons will be, and to this side of it will be theater and music classrooms, and you can see to the left there, the corner of the existing gym, the new kitchen will kind of fold around that corner of the kitchen there. There's the utilities are being rerouted up this road, so utilities are now up to the top of this hill. They're going to start around the back north side of the school with utilities. So utilities are finished here. The road's all cleared. This is a partial early in December of the retaining wall. This is the completed retaining wall and further work. So then we talk, I'm going to, if you want to ask questions, stop me. I'm going to kind of just move through this quickly. This is the revenue data that Dan gave to you last board meeting, put in a graphical form. So you can kind of see the bottom line's federal, the dark blue is local, the purple line second to the top is state, and then you see our total revenue. We talk a little bit about the fact that those lines are going up, not so much because we're being more funded more, but because our enrollment's going up, and it has been going up since about 2007-8. We've had a steady climb. This doesn't look real dramatic, but we have about 400 more students now than we did a decade ago. That's pretty significant when we were at about 2,000 a decade ago. So, and then we have a number of slides that just break out revenue, show these per pupil so that they're all being kind of compared the same way. So you've got expenditure. We talk a little bit about the bump in the middle was the ARA money that came in. So you see the bump in the middle, and then it dropped back down. Actually, our funding during that period of time, the state frankly used that money to supplant state money. And so when you see 2011-12, you see it drop off there. That was because our money went away, and then we were back down to left with our funding where it was. And McCleary has been putting pressure on the legislature to bring it up, but also part of that is well, no, that's not increased. There's no increased enrollment factor in this because this is per pupil. You can see that our per pupil expenditures through that period of time were pretty flat. And what we can say is thank you to our community because when we were struggling with state revenues and the strings attached with the federal dollars, the community stepped up and helped us maintain programs and staffing. And so that just kind of shows a summary of all that. This is where we are. In 2010, we were 43rd in per pupil expenditures in the state, which is probably Pullman was just slightly under that 9,100 because some of the schools on the west side are a little higher funded, locally funded than we are here. But you can see that we're below the middle, and that has not changed. We might even have dropped 1 or 2 slots since 2010 in per pupil funding. I think we're 40, we might be 45, 45th now.
We wouldn't want to embarrass Idaho too much by being too far ahead.
We talked a little bit about the changing expectations that have taken place over the last several years. There's been an impression that we're getting more money, and along with that has come an awful lot of requirements. This slide really talks about the whole testing. I don't know if anybody in the audience can see it, but the personnel directors interviewing a candidate. So you were educated in the public school system, what does that qualify you to do? And the candidate asks, is that a multiple choice true, false, or fill in the blank question? The point being is we're spending so much time on standardized testing that it's really cutting into instructional time, and working with kids in other ways. And my message to our legislators whenever I talk to them is, you know, cut out the madness and reauthorize ESEA, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, and you know, we need to take a snapshot of progress, but we don't have to do it every grade, every year. It's just craziness, the amount of time that kids spend in school on testing as opposed to learning. These are this is from the governor's office, the number of some of the major identified reforms that have been implemented by either, well, I think these are all based on legislative bills in the state. And this is since the McCleary decision was handed down in 2009. I don't expect you to read through those and understand every one of those. We could spend an hour at least on every one of them, but that's the legislation that was passed and implemented in 2013. Every one of those represents an individual bill that was passed for K-12 education in 2013. That's 2014. We haven't had a bill passed in 2015, but that's what we have already. That's what we have already for 2015.
That's what's been introduced.
Yeah, so you'll see some of these are repeats from year to year. Well, sometimes that's because they're phased in. You get one regulation one year and then it's added to the next year and added to the next year. Sometimes, this is the most frustrating, a bill gets passed and we start trying to implement that, and before we get it implemented, another bill passes that changes the one we were implementing last year. And that's the absolute frustration that public schools are facing right now. These are some, these are things that you all are familiar with, but when I go out in the community, some people want to know about these things, so we take a minute and talk about some of the things that are highlighted in the news right now. I'm not going to stop and talk about each one of them unless you have questions. Another frustration that comes with all of this is that the school board and the staff recognize that there are needs in our own community, and we try to address those needs, but it's very difficult for the board and for the staff in the school district to find the resources and the time when we're reacting to the changes from the legislature and Congress and the Department of Education. But these are some of the things that we are actively working on here in the district. And I know there's some acronyms there that you all know here, the board understands. And I'll stop and explain any of those that anybody needs me to. And then we talk, kind of wrap it up around the benefits of what we gain as a school district from our the local funding of our maintenance and operations. It's helped us keep up with growth, mitigates other funding volatility, has scaffolded the public schools through unpredictable funding and reforms, and maintains desired programs. And, and we kind of end on this, we're in it together. We have great schools, and I like to say that it's not all our fault. Our community is responsible for the quality of schools that we have. They fund us, they support us, they send us great kids, they support their kids, on and on. On the converse, I think having strong schools is a real benefit to a community in terms of quality of life and the economic development of Pullman as well. So that's the real quick run through of what we've been out talking about, and I just thought it was important for the board to get a quick view of that. And with that, any other questions about construction? We're becoming more on schedule. There's some things that are behind, some things that are ahead, but the weather and things are falling into place nicely. If Joe was here, he would say that the contractors are extremely responsive anytime there's a challenge or a problem, noise, trucks running at the wrong time. All he has to do is get on the phone and they make a change right away. So that, you know, there will always be those kinds of inconveniences when you go through a construction project, but they're really working with us to make it as least impactful as possible for learning.
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
We'll move on to our consent agenda, and in order to expedite business, we do a couple of items together here and vote on them as one item, unless the board would like to pull out certain things. These include the minutes, warrants, overnight field trip requests, budget status reports, and personnel reports. So does the board wish to pull something out of the consent agenda this evening, or are we ready to move forward?
I see no action to counteract this, so I
Okay.
will move that the consent agenda be approved as presented this evening.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? All right, thank you. We now move into our action items. These are items that we heard about at our last meeting as a discussion item. So we've heard from the advocates for these, and now it's time to vote on them. So our first one is the policy 6119 on collected non-tax revenue, presented by Dan Hornfeld. Thank you.
Thank you, President Everman. Uncollected non-tax revenue, excuse me, again, is revenue due from federal, state, local, and non-tax sources. And we presented this at the last meeting, asking that the board approve the changes that we made that are highlighted in red. Basically speaks to 7 years that agencies pursue collection on uncollected non-tax revenue for the school district, and we'd like it to be able to be stated that way. So that's what we present for approval.
Any questions for Dan this evening?
Thank you for fixing the date.
Thank you for coming up with it.
Precluding all that revenue coming in on the 31st.
Yeah. I will move that the board approve revisions made to policy 6119 on uncollected non-tax revenue.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the revisions on policy 6119 on collected non-tax revenue. Any further discussion from the board? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Thank you.
We'll move on to our next policy, which is 5240, the evaluation of staff, by Dr. Sturm.
And this is changes that came from our School Directors Association, and bring our evaluation policy in line with the new teacher and principal evaluation system.
How would the board like to move on?
I'd move approval as presented.
Okay.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the revisions on policy 5240, evaluation of staff. Any further discussion by the board? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Dr. Sturm is up again now with the policy on 5280, termination of employment.
Again, this is a revisions of policy 5240. Whoops, I'm looking at the wrong one, aren't I? Hold on a second.
There you go.
There you go, 5280.
Yes. Okay, and 5280 is, I'm going to turn the page here, is termination of employment, which you just said. Policy 5280, and again, these are clarifications and updates to this policy to fall in line with current law and practice. And let's see if there's anything for discussion in there. We had, I will just say that we've been talking about this a bit in problem solving with our teachers as well in terms of resignation and not resignation, but leave of absence and returning to, for the next year, we are requiring notification on April 1 for planning. And so that we're doing some clarification to come in line with this with our bargaining agreement as well.
Good. Any questions or comments for Dr. Sturm on this one?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
No,
Do I hear a motion?
that's great. I will move that we approve revisions made to policy 5280, termination of employment.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the revisions on policy 5280, termination of employment. Any further discussion from the board? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Okay, thank you.
Just before we, if I might, just before we move on, we have some visitors and people possibly watching. These policies and procedures that we just acted on with very little discussion have been discussed in a policy committee and at our last board meeting. So that's why there's maybe minimal, just appears like there's minimal discussion today.
Thank you, Paul. Our last action item this evening is policy 2410, graduation requirements by Dr. Maxwell.
Thank you. And tonight for your consideration is updating our graduation policy, 2410, to be in line with state and local graduation requirements. We've had an opportunity to review some additional information at the work session tonight and appreciate that conversation. And so we're recommending the following state and local requirements for graduation.
I will move that the board approve revisions made to policy 2410, graduation requirements.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the revisions made to policy 2410, the graduation requirements. This would be for the Pullman High School. Any further discussion from the board? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
I suppose we should point out that this is for the class of 2019 and beyond, and not for next year.
Correct. If you look in the policy, we actually broke it out by different cohort groups of years. So starting with 2015-16, I think it goes 16-18, and then 2019 and beyond. Thank you for.
Worried if anybody was just listening at this one time and not realize changing anything.
Yeah.
I mean, this goes for the freshmen coming in next year.
Correct. They'll go by their cohort groups. So.
Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Susan. We'll now move on to our discussion items. And our first item for discussion is the PTO donation from the Sunnyside Elementary.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. The Sunnyside Elementary School Parent-Teacher Organization would like to make a donation to the Sunnyside School for the purchase of Chromebooks for the classrooms. The board's aware that any purchases over $5,000 in a donation form must be approved by the board. This amount is $6,557. So we would ask the board to consider approving this amount for purchase of Chromebooks at Sunnyside School, and we're open to any discussion now, and we will bring this back at the next board meeting for recommendation for approval.
Do you know how many Chromebooks that would provide?
Boy, I don't.
They're just under $200 a piece,
And how many students are at Sunnyside?
about 400.
About 400, yeah.
So that should take care of a chunk of
Getting
it.
close.
It's 30 or
That's awesome.
40.
Dan,
Was it
is this
30?
time sensitive? I mean, are they going to buy the Chromebooks this year, this academic year, or?
Yes, they'd like to be able to do that. You know, we're situated to be able to bring it back at the next board meeting. That's what we'd planned on, but we're open to any action the board might want to take.
So would it be advantageous on the part of the board to maybe move this to an action item this evening? I always like to,
Take the money when you can.
well, I like
Take the money.
to let the people know that make the donation that we're grateful, number one, and number two, that we're going to use it quickly. So,
That would be appreciated, I'm sure.
I would move that we move this item from discussion to action, since it's in fact pro forma requirement of accepting the money. I don't anticipate that we'll have a rigorous dissension about whether to accept the generous gift or not.
I'd second that.
okay, so it's been moved and seconded that we move this Sunnyside Elementary PTO donation of $6,557 to an action item this evening. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Okay, good. So it's now on the floor as an action item, Dan.
Okay.
Is this going to cause an inequity with the other elementary schools in the district? I mean, are we going to end up with a problem with, I don't know how you do that. I mean, we're kind of making it unequal right now by accepting this for them to buy Chromebooks for one school. What do you do?
Well, it's a particular interest and effort by a specific PTO at a school,
Right.
yes, and so.
And I don't know what the count is right now, but this has been kind of happening at each of the schools. It seems to be a priority.
Right.
So I don't think that there is a significant discrepancy at this point, but I do think it's an important thing to consider. And we also have to consider, I wanted to make sure that Garen was aware, our IT director, because
Yeah, because that's a big burden for him, too.
because every time we add devices, it adds to the IT
Need for
workload.
support.
And so he's aware of this, so.
And is this going to be a stay-at-school device then?
Yes.
Yes. It is something that we're looking at. We're looking at the equity of technology, especially in relationship to testing. And so we'll be meeting with the administrators as well to look at drafting plans for how can we accomplish all the testing and maybe reduce the amount of time students are in testing rather than spreading it out for weeks and weeks and weeks. And so we're trying to be a little more efficient and have purchased some Chromebook cards that we can actually move from school to school to assist with primarily testing, but that could also help with other projects possibly that maybe a certain grade level or school may be working on too.
But if you have a PTO that has purchased the Chromebooks for Sunnyside, don't they have a right to object to the fact that you're hauling them over to another school?
We would only use the Chromebook carts that we purchase as a cart, moving those, not necessarily these, from what I understand, would be in the classrooms.
Okay. So they will
So
stay where they
they
are.
would
They're
stay.
for
We
the
wouldn't.
school, and if they went to all the work of, I don't know how many bake sales and cookie dough and everything else they have to sell, you want to make sure that they did the work, they get the reward. Okay.
Well, I will say, and Cameron's not here, he presented earlier, he has put together a schedule for testing the new Common Core test.
That's fine.
And I don't know if he's had a chance to show it to Bob yet, but, and I don't know if we're going to implement it, but it's a it's one way to look at getting testing done at each school in a week,
Wow.
instead of stretching it out
Oh,
over
forever.
weeks at a time. And so there's a real benefit to each school to share these devices, regardless of who paid for them. They're ultimately owned by the school district, but they would go back to those schools after testing, but to rotate those around so that schools can get through testing and move on is an advantage to every school to get the testing done quickly. So.
I think as you look, excuse me, as you look across the elementaries, the PTOs and the PTAs have made some great donations to the schools, and so they work with the principal to identify need in the school, and they can zero in on particular aspects of that. And so I think there's a variation of donations that bring quality of educational tools to the schools.
For example, I think I'm not sure which school it is, but one of the schools really focused on microphone speaker devices so that the teachers have a microphone that they wear around their neck, and then kids in the classroom can hear. Saves on the teacher's voice. It allows kids that are in the back of the room to hear as well as kids in the front of the room, that kind of thing. So they have different emphasis at different times.
Well, it just, my concern with the Chromebook, of course, is that you become more technology savvy, and with all the testing going on, then these kids are really going to have an advantage. So we have to worry about the other elementaries. That's all. I just devil's advocating.
Yeah, I think we've got a
You know, I'd like everybody to have one, so.
And that's pretty close in terms of the numbers of devices in each school.
Okay. Just checking.
Yeah.
Yep. No, that's a good point.
That's a good
Thank
point,
you.
yeah.
Does the board have any other discussion items for this?
No.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the Sunnyside Elementary PTO donation. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? So it's been moved now. So will you send a note of thanks to the PTOs? How does that work? Does the school district?
I'll notify Pam tomorrow, and she does that, or we can from the central office as well. So
That'd be good.
Yes.
I think
good, thank you.
the more thanks and gratitude we
That's
show
right.
the PTOs, the better.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Dan, this doesn't take a resolution, Pat, because it wasn't in our, this
No.
is just,
Not a resolution, just approval. Thank you.
Our next discussion item is presented by Dr. Sturm. This is on Pullman High School project management. This is an organization that will coordinate activities within the new renovated high school. So, Dr. Sturm.
Thank you. We were, as you saw, the construction of Pullman High School, the front of the building is scheduled to be completed sometime next fall. And along with that will come some classrooms that need furnishings. And so we have a budget in our project for fixtures, furnishings, and equipment. We shortcut that and call it FF&E. And it's quite a complex process of identifying samples, getting samples delivered so that the end user, the teachers, the staff can look at those, make decisions about what the furnishings will be, and make selections and keep it within budget. We have an opportunity to get some help with that through our project management services, construction services group. And they have an FF&E specialist that we've met with, and they gave us a bid to manage the process. Their bid was originally $72,000 to do this work, I asked them to see if the pencil could be any sharper, and they knocked 7% off, brought it down to 67, with the assurances that even the $72,000 bill will be probably save us double from doing it ourselves, in terms of the leverage that they can do in terms of competition, getting competition that we wouldn't be able to do because we don't have the connections and the resources that they do, because this is their business, it's what they do. Pretty hard to bid this against somebody else because they're a not-for-profit group, and all the other groups that do this are for profit, and most of them are vendors, and so you don't see what the cost is. It's in the furnishings and the fixtures, and this is a flat fee. You pay for the service, and you know what your fixed cost is, and it's not embedded in the cost of the furnishings that you purchase. We ran this by our project managers. This is a division of that group. They recommend that we do this, that we have the budget, and that it will actually protect our budget. It will probably come out ahead if we do this instead of trying to run it on ourselves, on our own, with our own staff. And so that's our staff recommendation, that you consider that. I've been through this personally at a high school where I was the principal and we were ordering furniture. I can't imagine not having this kind of help to do it. I had that. This kind of help. It was a different kind of group. This group wasn't in existence then, but it was a for-profit group at that time. But it was a flat fee provider at the time, and just to keep track of where things are. Some pieces of this that I didn't mention, they're in the background there. When the orders come in, they get delivered and they have to get set up, and this person coordinates all that. Timing, is on site, make sure it all happens, so we don't have to take our staff away from the other work that they're doing to do that work. They process warranties, they process the POs, purchase orders for us. And I think personally, I think there's a real advantage because it is a department of our existing project managers, because they're already able to talk to each other and exchange information between each other. So,
How much input does the staff here have, or we have, on what fixtures are purchased?
the staff has, there will be a committee process that would happen anyway, but this person will facilitate it, but the staff makes those decisions.
Okay.
This is just someone to facilitate the
oversee
process.
the-
Yeah, facilitate
actual
and take care of the
buying.
details of
Yeah.
the process.
Okay.
Well,
Make sure we don't spend more money than we have.
I don't understand that
Yep.
concept.
well, every service that we've had over the years from this group has been exemplary, and the fact that this is a subset, I think we did the same thing with Lincoln, didn't we?
No, we didn't. Actually, this service is only 6 years old,
Oh,
so they weren't doing this.
it's an added,
Yeah, they weren't
just
doing
like
this.
value engineering was added and
Yeah.
constructability was added and so on.
We used a furniture vendor the last time at Lincoln.
But we did use a similar model service, and this one is part of our overall group that we've employed.
One of the advantages of not using a single vendor to help us manage this process is that you can get what you want from a variety of vendors instead of being kind of stuck with a limited.
Do they all have to be part
Option.
of the state provider pool or whatever that is, if to be a vendor for this kind of a thing?
If they aren't, we'd have to go out to bid, and that would be part of this process.
Okay.
If they're in KCDA, the state pre-bid process, then we don't have to go out to bid. So it just depends on what the selection is. So,
Yes, there are national co-ops that
Yeah.
qualify as well.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, they go beyond the state, right, right. This is another one that we would be, if the board wants to cogitate on this for another 2 weeks, that's fine. I know that the staff is chomping at the bit to get started on this process, so this is one that, the previous one, there wasn't really a sense of urgency, but at least I'm going to throw that out there for the board to consider. I don't like to do that, but the committee has already started meeting, and we'd like to be able to finalize the contract with CSG as soon as possible.
Well, personally, I think anything we can do to get back at or ahead of schedule, we would want to do. The money was for the furnishings as part of the overall budget for the project. We've already approved that. This represents savings. So we'll see how it rides, but with Jim's approval, I would move that we move this to an action item.
Seconded?
It's been moved and seconded that we move the master agreement language, the Pullman High School project management team, the FF&E, to an action item. That would be in the amount of $67,000. Any further discussion?
I'd prefer to wait.
The whole agreement, have you looked at it in your packet? Looks pretty good.
Oh, yeah, I have no problem with it. I just think, unless there's some dire need,
Yeah.
I prefer to do it that way.
Any further discussion?
It is a big expense. So,
So with that discussion item in mind, let's proceed and vote. All those in favor of moving this to an action item, please say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Nay.
I'll vote in favor because I won't be here for the next meeting to vote for it otherwise.
Okay, so that, all right, that would be the majority then. Thank you. So now we have this as an action item before us this evening, the Pullman High School project management to go out to project management FF&E.
Well, actually, my remarks earlier were not related to moving it up so much as to my support for using this firm, so I would just ditto my previous remarks, and I think it's a service that is almost guaranteed to pay for itself, and the money is budgeted as part of the overall project.
So do I hear a motion for approval?
Yeah, I would so move that we retain Construction Services Group, the professional services from Construction Services Group, the H&E Management Services for the cost of $67,000.
Seconded?
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the Pullman High School project management team to proceed with the FF&E for $67,000. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? So it has been approved.
Thank you.
Our last discussion item this evening is on the master agreement language, and Dr. Sturm, you're up on this one as well.
Well, let's see. we've had several problem-solving team meetings, and we have reviewed Article 3, Section 8 on vacancies, Article 3, Section 12 on leave of absence, and Article 3, Section 12 on new parent leave. And as you can see there, we have agreed, tentatively agreed to fill open positions in and out, or to post vacancies in and out of the district at the same time. Our current practice is to open them in district for 5 days, a minimum of 5 days, before we open them out of district for another minimum of 5 days. And at certain times that works fine, and other times it puts us in a crunch, and especially this last year it was notable. We had so much hiring that was late in the spring that it stretched the process well into late into the summer. And the concern is not only staff time, but making sure that we have access to a pool of candidates before they take some other job. So that was a negotiation that we made with problem solving, and it has not been ratified by the membership yet, but it's been tentatively agreed to by the problem solving team, again, which is a group of representative teachers and administrators. The other leave of absence, we just strengthened the language in the section about leave of absence, about returning, and requiring that at least when a teacher leaves, goes out on a leave of absence, they state that they intend to come back as a condition of granting or bringing that forward to the board. We've had a number of recent year-long leave of absences that nobody returned, and so that basically we have to hire a temporary person for a year to hold that position, and we can't go out for a year. And there are certain circumstances that there's none of us that would not grant a leave of absence, but there are other cases where it's not clear that the person's going to come back.
My thought was that not necessarily on the leave of absence, but on the vacancy part, that I think it's really important because it's a desirous district to teach in. If we can hit the timing right and cut down that process, so I'm encouraged that what we see has been approved by problem solving, because I know it was a horrendous late spring and summer for all concerned.
And the interest
And
of
that was with an experienced, very experienced in our district person handling the details, and I'm not casting any aspersions on our new staff member in that area, but certainly if we could lower the amount of stress on that particular person and the teams that are continually having to interview, it really takes a lot of staff time.
And I think it's important to mention that from the Teachers Association point of view, I'll speak for you, Amy, since you're not sitting up here for a minute. You know, it's really important that teachers that are already employees who want to move get an opportunity. And so we had a lot of discussion about how do we make sure that any teacher that's qualified for an open position will be considered. for that. So they'll be part of, they won't be screened out. In other words, they'll be part of the interview process if they have the qualifications for the position that's open. So we didn't want to cut that opportunity out for our own employees, because we want our employees to have a chance to move when they desire that. So I think that's another important piece of this as we communicate it forward.
Paul, you said that this was tentatively agreed to. Bargaining has looked at this as well.
Well,
The Teachers Association.
yes, that problem solving is a representative group that bargains for the teachers' master agreement, and it has a representative from the teacher leadership, association leadership, and representatives from each school that represent their staff are on that team. And then we have both elementary and secondary principals, as well as Bob and myself and Dagny are on that team. So the tentative agreement is reached by that problem-solving team, but then it has to come forward to the school board to be approved, and it also has to go to the membership of the association to be approved.
Okay.
So what we agree to at the problem-solving team, we are careful to say is a tentative agreement,
Mhm.
depending on ratification by the board and the membership.
Okay. So those are the conditions.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Any further questions for Dr. Sturm on this? Paul, you want to mention this?
Yes, thank you. Is this the right time?
Well, we're moving on to the informational items.
Oh,
So
okay,
do you wanna-
perfect, all right.
So
I missed-
that concludes our discussion items, but there's one thing that Dr. Sturm would like to let the board know about, kind of
Right.
a heads up.
It was in my plan for my board report, and I brushed over it. Thanks for reminding me. We have had over the last several months, starting last spring, our visitations to schools, different facilities, not only schools, but our transportation maintenance. And we have a work session a week from today to review all of those observations and begin to build a plan around what we have seen and what our needs are. And I discussed it briefly at the Finance Committee meeting that we had on Monday, but I have taken the liberty to draft up a worksheet for each of those facilities, and that briefly outlines or identifies the issues and needs at each facility, some possible solutions that we've discussed, some action steps, identified the persons that might take the lead on those, and a proposed timeline. And that's just a draft. The Finance Committee has seen it. I wanted to have copies for you tonight for the other three board members, and I was trying to make copies when we were trying to get the technology to work, and I didn't pull it off. So I will email this to you. I'll try to get that done tonight so that you have these copies simply to review and make notes on, and come to the work session a week from tonight for about an hour and a half discussion. And that's probably not going to be enough, but it's a place to kind of start talking about our needs in a comprehensive way. We have also talked with the board on a number of occasions about property acquisition for potential needs around the district in the future, and we might have some. Well, we'll update you on the progress we've made. We don't have anything to bring forward to the board at this time, but it'll fit into this work session as well. So I saw some of you looking a little surprised when I mentioned a work session next week. Are we all okay with that?
I won't be here.
You won't be here. Okay.
Sorry.
So that
Can
was,
you, but
I'll
I will
look at
send
it
you
and
this
review
if
it,
you have
yeah.
time to send us some reactions to this and anything.
Okay.
Mainly I'm looking for what What have we left out of here that needs to be in this, at least for the column on issues and needs? If we've not picked up on something that we need to be considering, if you could email that to me, I'll get it incorporated into the table, and then we'll have it for our full discussion.
See, that's the 4th. I'm going to be in Olympia that day too.
Okay. Is this something we should reschedule? Would two of the 5?
I'm thinking since we were all participating in the facilities review, it might not be a bad idea to maybe think about rescheduling.
Okay.
What kind
I
of,
know that Jim and I have had longer to digest it. We saw the list from our finance committee meeting the other day.
Would,
and I reviewed it. I certainly can be here on Wednesday.
would what does the 18th look like?
Is that the third?
That's the 3rd Wednesday, so it's in.
you know,
You can't do
I
it.
can never do
You
it.
can never do it. Yeah.
If we went to the 11th.
What's that?
What if we went the 11th, just like we did
Is
today?
that college?
how about March 4th? Postpone or?
We have a study session scheduled for that night. We had an agenda, but we can move it forward.
I'm concerned that, as per our discussions that we had in the finance committee meeting, that some discussion of this list at some level needs to take place as we move into
Budget.
policy setting for what we do with the capital projects budget and with the starting of budgeting for 15-16, and that if we postpone even the discussion until March, it's really going to hamper. I would think that process. I saw a nod from Dan, but I don't know
Yeah.
whether that was
Well,
concurrence.
how about if I suggest this? How about if we get if we can get this complete, we have a meeting as scheduled next week for those of you that can make it. We'll talk about the budget implications. Of course, we won't make any decisions at a work session anyway. That will come to the full board. But at least we can get a broader representation of input from the board on some of those issues that affect our budget planning for next year. And then we'll bring this back in March, and this will be our, on March 4th, this will be our main focus for that work session. Does that work?
So we will plan on meeting next week.
Good.
Susan and Dean will just brief you on what we talk about, not decide.
Sure.
Well, again, it might be that some issues separate out and we deal with them in the board meetings in February rather than waiting until dealing with them at a board meeting following March 4th or something like that, which would put it like 6 weeks away or whatever. So,
Good.
Trust Dan and you to prioritize some of the discussions next week with what might appear on the
It'll be
board
more like
agenda.
a finance committee workshop instead of a property. I mean, they tie together, but really the timely issue is some of these decisions around, we need to start having discussions about, as you
For
said.
Allison and Dean and Susan, one of the things that I brought up at the finance committee meeting is that we're looking at the whole policy around what we do with capital projects. Some of the parameters have changed by state law and state WAC and so on and so forth. We really haven't had that discussion, but it's so commingled between policy and finances that I don't see it appropriate to be recommended just by the policy committee or just by the finance committee. Hence was my anxiety about having a good full board discussion about it in a board setting where we can actually make decisions about changing policy and so on. the wording, probably the wordsmithing and so on and so forth, would be for the policy committee to really fine tooth, but the basic philosophies and concepts that we're going to be addressing really commingle in that one. They're a mixture of financial planning and philosophy and policy.
Well, if we bring that forward to a board meeting prior to March, we'll make sure we schedule enough time for a full discussion on those topics in the board meeting.
Sounds okay, Susan and Dean?
It does.
All right, good. So we're on for next week, 4:30 to 6.
Okay.
Okay, and that'll be up at the
Have
Pullman
fun.
or Pioneer.
Yeah, up in my office in Pioneer Center.
Good, okay. Well, there are a number of informational items there. I'll allow you to look those over. And we have no executive session this evening. So believe it or not,
I will move that we adjourn.
thank you, Susan. You just took the words right out of my
It
mouth.
needs to be a
You
second.
didn't wait for me to ask for a
I don't
motion.
mess around.
You are so speedy.
You bet.
All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Apologize for the technical difficulties tonight.